She's got this whole world where everything's better, the food, the garden, the neighbors, but it's all a trap. Here's your look at the new NECA Toys Caroline articulated figure. This articulated figure of Caroline features adjustable arms and legs, a swappable faceplate, and even has movable eyes. To figure out how tall the figure stands, I'm actually just keeping her on the display stand just by the nature of the way that she's constructed. She has a tough time standing on her own. So if you'll excuse me for that, we're going to go ahead and take the tape measure, put it right to the very top of her head, and stopping the tape measure right there, we know that the striped shirt of Caroline stands 7.7 inches in height, which translates to centimeters as being almost, not quite there, almost 20 centimeters, 19.7 to be exact. Yes, as I said, she doesn't have a great job standing on her own. She's just kind of a bit of a spindly figure, but that's okay. The folks over at NECA Toys include a display stand. Let me just show you what I mean. She just does have a little bit of a difficulty to stand. Sometimes I can get her to balance. Most times, though, she ends up just falling over. So I'm actually just going to lay her down for a second just to show you the display stand that comes included with Caroline. We have seen these before, not very few times, though, but what we are getting here is a clear display stand, and it has 3 adjustable peg points. You get also an adjustable neck, and you can just pop that out of the supplied hole. Also to note as well that you have 2 accessible holes, and then you have one that's got a plug to it. It's actually just a case of you just put this underneath here, and you can pop this back through if you want to use this display stand here. Actually, it's a little easier to push it from the top. That makes a little bit more sense. We're just going to push that through, and this will actually pop. I don't know if you can see it. It just pops it right out like that. And then you can actually use this plug to cover off any one of the other holes, depending on where, again, you want to display this. It attaches, like I said, to those 3 open sockets, and you just attach that in like so. I find it's actually helpful if you just twist it a little bit as you're putting it in there. And there is the adjustable neck. The couple of variations to what you can do at the neck, for example, as it does have a couple of different knuckle points. I call knuckle points basically just the points in which they have hinges, kind of like your fingers. That's why I call them knuckle joints. It hinges back and forth, and also, just by the way it attaches into the display base, it rotates also back and forth. Now, what you can also do is they give you this piece as well that you can just attach to extend the length of the neck. And it's not to say that you necessarily have to display Caroline way up there, and that's ridiculous. However, what you can do is you can adjust this knuckle point like that, and then you can kind of have her in a leaping or jumping pose. She also does come with an adjustable waist clip. It actually kind of looks a little bit like the DC Collectibles stands that used to come with their figures, they since of which gotten rid of that. Also has a hinge joint that hinges back and forth. You can rotate this back and forth this way, and these will open and close. So a couple of different variations for how you can display the adjustable stand. You don't necessarily have to use all of them. You can just take them right. I only use the first one for the opener of this review, but just to show you that there are a couple of different variations to how you can display it. Most definitely, though, I would say use the display stand, because the figure will have some difficulty to stand. Interesting also to note as well that these adjustable stands do have peg points on there that you can use for other figures. I'd say you could use it for Caroline. Unfortunately, she doesn't have visible peg holes on the undersides of her feet, being that the footwear that she's sporting is fabric. It's covering over everything, and I don't even feel that there's peg holes on the undersides of her feet, leading me to believe that those peg points are really there just because, again, we've seen these stands before. You can use them for another figure like a Jason Voorhees or something like that. I always seem to go back to Jason Voorhees. So there is the adjustable display stand. I don't think we need it right now, so I'm just going to kind of move it over to the side. And let's have a look at Caroline. Now, what a nice looking figure. Coraline, I always want to say Caroline. Coraline is a neat looking figure. We've seen this one before, not quite this look. But we've seen a Coraline also. I did a review of an earlier one on this channel. It's so cool to see that we are getting an expansion where NECA Toys is still wanting to do Coraline figure releases. Because I think this is, in all honesty, some of their best stuff. This is the kind of stuff that if you look at it, you would swear, I would swear, of course, that this was taken right out of the actual animatronic puppets that they use. It just feels and looks like something I would have actually found at one of the animators' workshops. It's just a marvel that what really in its simplicity is able to accomplish, and yet still again looks so good. A lot of that, of course, can be contributed to the fact that she does have just a great looking head sculpt. It looks just like the animated feature. It is comprised of a translucent blue plastic. That's not the entire figure, that's just, of course, her hair. You can see that the light does a great job of just reflecting through it, almost giving her hair that little bit of glow. Coraline also has the little dragonfly clip there on the top of her hair. And just, again, really a neat looking head sculpt. Now, the thing I didn't get a chance to cover off, for one reason or another, I just never got around to, what are you doing with that screwdriver? I didn't actually show you the face plates on the other Coraline. It just, for some reason, slipped my mind. I can most definitely cover off on those right now. The neat thing about these Coraline figures is the fact that they do have interchangeable face plates. And this is one of the reasons why I've got a screwdriver here present. It's just sort of to help me. There is a seam line right around the bottom edge here, and it wraps all the way around. Basically, where her hair is, the faceplate is actually inside of that. Makes sense. I find it's actually easy just to take like a very thin, I've got like a, I don't know what you would call this, just like a little crafter. I don't even know if you would say crafter. It's basically like a tool kit, and using just a very small, one of the smallest flat-headed screwdrivers. You don't have to necessarily use a screwdriver. I just find it's easier. Get your screwdriver in there just to get underneath the plate and just kind of pry this away. This becomes very easy, much easier to get access to our faceplate. I find I can use this. If you'd rather just use your fingers, you can do that as well. Either way, though, you want to just pry the face away. It's wedged enough in there that I find just getting your fingers to it is not something that it could be done just on its own. A little bit of aid, a little bit of help certainly goes a long way. I find, again, screwdriver, you don't want to use a screwdriver, you don't have to use a screwdriver. Take the faceplate completely off, and you're immediately treated to a faceless Coraline. There's the faceplate right there. And the neat thing about it is that when you do pick up the other Coraline figures, you can use these faceplates. So in other words, if you say get the one with the raincoat, you can use that faceplate from this, swap it to that one, and bring the other faceplate, which as you can see will, when we do have a look at the other Coraline figures, have a unique head portrait to it. This one has a slight more worrisome looking face. You can see that the corner of her mouth is kind of up. Very nice visible set of teeth, up and lower set of teeth there. And you can kind of line up to see how, yeah, everything would plug into place. I kind of wish there was an easier way, honestly, to take the faceplate off. And as you saw, it did involve me kind of just doing a little bit of prying to eventually wedge it away. It's because it's got longer pegs. They're a little harder. Once they're rooted into the whole sockets, a little harder, I find, to take the faceplate off. One thing that you also can do, other than just swapping out the face expressions, is you can also adjust the eyes. Now, something that they've gone away with on the Gizmo figure used to have this, was a little trackball system on the back. I find this is much easier. I wish kind of they could go back to the drawing board when it comes to the Gizmo figures and do this, where it's simply just basically sitting on ball joints. That's as simple and easy as it could possibly be. And you can just move the eyes. Now, I know what you're saying. How will you know exactly where those eyes sit? Well, again, you can kind of go back to the faceplate without completely putting it in place. You can see, okay, those eyes are facing down, if you can see that. What I'll do is I'll bring these eyes back like that, and I can bring that eye back up like this. And even though the eye area does look awkward, it doesn't make like it could possibly make any sense. You have to, again, look at where the irises will be. And again, you've got now the eyes looking a little bit this way, so I'm just going to remove the plate, bring the eye a little bit closer over. Once again, line it up. There's one eye completely leveled, and maybe we'll just bring this eye just a little bit over. There we go. That's almost centered. So we'll go ahead and just pop that back into place. Just push it along, kind of push in the face like that. I would imagine the number of times that you do it may allow then future times doing it a little easier. But for the time being, it is a little tricky to kind of get in there. They could use magnets. I don't know if I've ever seen many examples of NECA toys that have used magnets, but a magnet system certainly would come in a lot more of an easier feat than, like I said, using a tool. Or if you have sharp enough, long enough fingernails, you could probably get in there as well. So there's our head portrait. This again, a stunning representation of Coraline. Just this, I still think, is one of NECA's best properties. It's not something that they cover a lot of, but I mean, like, looking at this just looks stunning. Now this one does have the striped shirt, a pair of blue jeans, and matching orange footwear. Kind of looks like orange socks. I'm leaning more towards them being socks than they are footwear. And underneath all of that, if I can peel away, this one's a little harder because everything is so small and thin on her. It's kind of almost impossible to kind of get to it. But everything has joints. And one thing that's nice about it is they're ratcheted joints. I don't know if you can hear it or not. Like so. The hardest part is actually when you get this out of the box, packaging, clamshell casing, is trying to figure out where the joints lay. In some cases, actually, I found when you can get to them, legs are some of the easiest things you can get to. Roll those up. You can see where that hinge joint is. And from there, you feel a little bit more comfortable, I find, once you can see how the joint works. Especially with this type of joint system. Once you know it's leaning back and forth like that, you can bring the pant leg back down. And then you know exactly how to bend that leg. And she, like I said, it does have a fair bit of articulation, to the point then that even in the packaging, you could actually have her kind of leaning down like that. Of course, you would want to straighten the leg a little bit, or you bend the back the leg. But it just goes to show, being that this is kind of like an articulated puppet, you can really do a whole lot with it. You can also get her in, like I said, running poses. Packaging, actually, the back really does show a lot of cool things that you can do with it. This also lends then to the idea of having a longer display stand, because then you can adjust accordingly how you want to display the figure. For running poses, I probably will end up using the 2 knuckle points, the longer one attaching to the shorter one. And even if I'm not going to necessarily get the full length happening, I can at least accommodate the fact that I can get her in something like a running pose. The thing about it, though, is as you are articulating Coraline, the display stand does fight a little bit with you. So you may have to just kind of get the figure in the pose that you want, and then find a way to make it work with the display stand. And again, that's the hardest part, is just getting, if anything, like the display stand just to work with you. The display stand does fight a little bit, and the neck does push back a little bit when you are displaying the figure. But again, like, you can do a lot of stuff with it. The limitations of anything are coming from the display stand. So just kind of get the pose that you want to get going for Coraline, and then once that is in place, just very, not aggressively, but just adjust the display stand accordingly until you get the desired look that you want for Coraline. Okay, so let's have a look at her articulation. And like I said, there's a fair bit for the fact of a figure this size. We can look at her head first and foremost. She does have a ball joint. It's kind of where one limitation is to this figure. I kind of wish that the socket was a little bit bigger, possibly, for the ball joint. It does seem like it gives you what a ball joint should accomplish: a hinge back and forth, a hinge up, a hinge down. But it doesn't seem like it's almost there. It's almost there. It's not quite there. I wish it could actually have bent just a little bit more back and forth. But you still get the angle back and forth, the head pivot back and forth, head hinges up and down, and you can rotate the head all the way around, being that it is ball jointed. The upper torso does have what seems also to be a ball joint, so you rotate all of that all the way around. The arms hinge out, forward and back, bend at the elbow. What seems to be only a single hinge on the elbow. And you can also rotate those hands all the way around, hinging those back and forth too. No waist swivel from what I can see. Legs hinge forward and back, out. She has that bend in the knee. Again, if it helps you, bring the pant leg up so that you know exactly where that hinge is actually sitting. Leg hinges back and forth, also on a very nice clickety ratchet joint. And even like the feet are a surprise to me. They rotate back and forth, they hinge up and down, but as you can also see, she has foot articulation. Again, for something this size is quite a feat. So periodically, this is actually a good example of this, periodically as you are manipulating and moving the figure, it simply just sits on a peg system. The peg at the bottom of the hinge, and then attaches to the whole, it's almost like just piping really, of the leg. One good thing is, as simple as it's been constructed also means it's simple to get back together. Nothing really is going to break on this. If the arms pop out, for example, you simply can just move the arms, move the sleeves back, and then you can manipulate it back to the way that you want it. This is not a surprise to me because I had already looked at the first Coraline. But in all honesty, I think, personally speaking, this is one of NECA's kind of surprise gems. There's something so charming about this particular line. I love the first Coraline figure that we had a look at. The fact that we are also getting a chance now to look at future, new releases of Coraline makes me extremely happy. There was something I really quite liked about Coraline, the film, kind of a very dark-toned animated feature. Not quite animated, but you know what I mean. The fact that we would get a company that actually is giving as much passion to a figure line that had the same similar passion to what they had produced on screen is just, again, a marvelous feat. NECA, I think, is really the best company to have helmed this. And really, again, based on what you saw from this review, there's simplicity to the way that she's constructed, and yet she pulls off so much more than simply just simplicity. For final looks, I contemplated displaying Coraline the figure like she is depicted here on the front of the packaging. After all, she's wearing the same orange striped sweater. But then it occurred to me that the expression on Coraline package Coraline's face is a little bit more of confidence, unlike the actual physical figure in which her head sculpt, the facial expression at least, is a little bit more of shock. So I decided to display the figure accordingly, and I kind of got her more in a surprise look than anything else. One of the beauties of NECA's swappable, interchangeable face is that if you decide you want to use a different face expression for this design of Coraline with the orange striped sweater, if you have one of the other Coraline figures, simply just pop the face plate off and swap it till you get the desired look that you want. This is the great thing I like about this particular lineup that NECA has done. Coraline is really a unique looking figure. She's superposable and can really get in all the poses that you would want to get her in, and she has the interchangeable face options. The downside, though, of the figure is not really actually of the figure itself. It's of the display stand. The display stand is finicky, and being that it's made of longer sectional points, means that it does fight with you when you eventually get the figure into a pose that you really want to stick with. Then you have the unfortunate task of trying to manipulate those longer, clear posts to hold the figure in exactly the way that you wanted to settle with. I don't know what I would have done differently. Maybe a wire-framed neck, something of which that would have a lot more sectional points to it, kind of like Godzilla's tail, but just imagine that as a wire frame. Something that you could manipulate a little bit easier. At the end of the day, though, a great-looking figure. The only shortcoming actually comes from the clear stand than anything else. Coraline is, like I said, one of those real gems that I'm glad NECA has continued to run with. I initially looked at the first Coraline figure and absolutely loved it. I'm glad to see that NECA has continued and wanted to continue releasing future Coraline figures. They have released two. We're going to have a look at both of those on this channel, this one and the other one, which I think is in a raincoat. So if you guys are a big fan of Coraline, I really liked the movie. It was kind of dark, and I'm all about dark, kind of animated features. I'm happy to see that, like I said, NECA is still continuing to run with this license because I really personally feel like this is one of their gems. Of course, for every Jason and for every Freddy Krueger and every Godzilla that people really gravitate towards and they think NECA toys for, every once in a while NECA will grab onto a license, and it just... I stand here and I'm looking at this Coraline figure and I love this design. It looks like, literally looks like it was taken out of the workshop that would have initially made this film. Well done, NECA Toys. Well done. Today we were having a look at the new NECA Coraline. This was the articulated figure, which I might also add had the striped shirt. I have to mention that because the other Coraline isn't going to have the striped shirt. I think, like I said, it's the yellow raincoat. So I'm looking forward to having a review of that one. If you've managed to pick up this figure for yourself, let me know down below in the comments section what you think of it, or really just based on this review and this review alone. Like I said, the only thing shortcoming to this figure is not the figure itself, it's that pesky clear display stand. Wish they do something a little bit differently for that. If you guys want to go back and have a look at some of my other NECA reviews, I've done a whole bunch since the starting of this YouTube channel. NECA is probably one of the most go-to things that I seem to go to on this channel. So if you want to go back and have a look at all the other stuff that I've covered for NECA Toys, there's a playlist for you. Make sure as well you hit that subscribe button down below and turn on your bell notifications so that when future videos are coming onto this channel, you'll never miss out. As always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.